Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. I'm Joe Thorderson, here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and Alyssa Diggs and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And off the air, I'm sort of horrified. No, I'm not horrified. I'm just it's another reminder of why it's useful to have multi-generations on Geek Tank Radio.
Right.
Brandon, there's a pretty big generation gap in terms of the way we consume superhero entertainment and our opinions about such. Well, Alyssa was telling me some stuff. I was shocked.
But
shocked, Alyssa.
We also have
I'm
to think
so
about
sorry.
the way she was raised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't have that in my house.
Okay, well we're gonna unpack that in a second. Brandon, we've gave everybody plenty of time to get caught up on the Caped Crusader, and so we don't mind talking spoilers here.
If you were worried about spoilers, you'd have watched it by now.
Yeah. So too bad for you. And also, I hope you guys don't mind. I'd love to later talk about that Saturday night trailer. It looks pretty interesting.
I'm digging it, but I've also got a couple other trailers I want to talk about that dropped yesterday.
Trailer talk.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, so we got that coming up. It's going to be another, dynamic episode of Geek Tank Radio.
We're going to cram as much into this hour as we can.
But Alyssa, so we were just casually talking as we did, because we were talking about the Caped Crusader, and I said, well, Alyssa, are you up to date? Have you watched it?
I said, no, I didn't.
She said, but you said you don't watch DC at all.
I don't really watch a lot of DC at all. I keep up with the movies. But I know that those aren't necessarily canonically accurate. Like the Robert Pattinson Batman, loved it, thought it was great.
Oh, good. I was about to say, if you didn't, I don't know if we
I
could
thought that
be
was
friends.
so good. I loved it so much. One of my favorite Batman movies I ever saw.
It's only the third one she's ever seen.
No, I saw all the 80s ones. I seen those.
Oh, you did?
I did. I saw those.
Well, Alyssa, but you said you don't watch DC, and I'm like, okay, that's a pretty big, broad statement, but you kind of defended it too. What's your beef?
I personally don't love Zack Snyder as a director. Okay, so to rewind, I don't read comic books. Specifically large mainstream ones. I've read very small ones very lightly.
I want to give you a little heads up. A lot of people who collect comics don't read them either.
Yeah.
I've only ever ventured into superheroisms via movies and some cartoons, mostly in Marvel, because that's what my dad liked, and so that's what we watched. He didn't dislike DC. Like I said, I watched some of those 80s Batman's movies, but Marvel was bigger in our house. I remember seeing Iron Man. It was a very big deal for my dad. He was very excited to show that to us, and the Hulk movies. And then me and him watched the Marvel cartoon, I think Avengers Assemble, which had Black Panther and Ant-Man before they had even mentioned them in the Marvel Cinematic Universe yet. And I was so excited. I was like, that's what's coming? I can't wait. And just DC was not like that in our house because it was a little bit darker too, and we were not allowed to consume such dark, grimy media as well.
I mean, you didn't actually see the Harry Potter movies until you were how old?
I don't know, like in my teenage years. I wasn't allowed to watch Lord of the Rings until I was 10.
Okay, that explains it, because Max was watching Lord of the Rings when he was like 5 or something. But okay,
no.
Well, I mean, so there was I still think that when Max hatched, the first thing that happened was, there was a Batman comic and a Tolkien novel.
Yeah, in his hand.
And a katana.
Well, but Alyssa, it sounds like there was a little bit of a bias in the house against DC.
I think so, a little bit. Like I said, it's my dad's preference, I think, is Marvel. And it became my preference. And then I don't like Zack Snyder's visual aesthetics. And so I find it really painful to sit through those movies. And I've watched them all, just don't like any of them. Not a single one.
Well, I don't want to bash.
Suicide Squad? I love Suicide Squad.
Oh,
I thought
did?
those movies rocked.
I didn't like the director's cut. I thought all they did is add 20 minutes of them walking.
It was
so lame.
Boring.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the director's cut. Glad I didn't.
Don't watch it. It doesn't help.
It's like Harley's shorts became shorter and the exposition became unbearable.
You want to know how much I love Suicide Squad? I loved Polka Dot Man so much that I was ready to read comics about it. and I Googled him to try to find some comic books about Polka Dot Man, and man, was I so sad to find out that there's nothing out there for him.
What about Arm Fall Off Boy? You didn't get into that? Gosh. But it's interesting, though, because now, Alissa, I am going to tell you one. I'm going to give you a good recommendation, and I think you guys will all agree on this one. If you haven't watched Batman, The Long Halloween, the animated, it's... Yep. 2-part. It's good.
I'll check it out.
One of the best ones I've ever
seen. I've seen a little bit of that Harley Quinn cartoon, and I did like that. I just need to sit through and watch them.
I'll tell you my recommendations as far as the DC stuff goes. Is I would definitely recommend like Joe said, The Long Halloween's good. The animated version of The Dark Knight Returns, Batman the Animated Series, and Batman Beyond.
Okay.
Right.
I love Harley Quinn, and the new Kite Man cartoon is great.
I love
and of course because the animated is always, I'm sorry, the action movies are great, but the animated is always more my love. And I will go ahead and tell you my adventures with Superman, because it's not canonical to the comics, but it's way more. It's easier to digest for someone who's not a huge Superman fan.
Okay, I'll try it out because of all the DC, Superman probably my least favorite.
Yeah,
hate to be controversial.
Well,
no, I'm kind of with you.
Here's the thing: so many people, and I'm gonna bash every Superman writer in the past 15 years too. They don't do the character justice because they go, "All right, we're gonna give him this thing, and we're gonna have him act morose about it, and then in the end, he's gonna beat it up." But they never go into the nuance about Clark. His the conflict between his Kryptonian heritage and being raised on a farm. They never go into the stuff where he's young and having to deal with stuff. When he first meets Jimmy, when he first meets Lois, and he's trying to ingratiate himself into other characters.
Yeah.
I think my brother put it really well. He said that he doesn't like Superman. He's boring because he always wins.
Yeah, but
then he should hate Batman.
But you know what?
But he's invincible, more invincible than Batman.
Superman's.
I will guarantee you that is absolutely incorrect.
Yeah, Superman's got psychological layers that you could unpack. The guy's planet was destroyed. How would you react if you were an orphan?
We rely on the fact that Batman's trauma as a child is what keeps him from. He wants to make sure no one ever has to go through that. Superman lost everything before he even knew what he had.
Exactly. Yeah. He's completely isolated. And, so you could make a good story out of that.
But when it comes down to it, I can understand, Max, I can agree with your brother, especially with the way that the comics have been written, because writers don't get it.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to continue the conversation here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The rules never said radioactive mountain gorillas were prohibited. The Geek Patrol is back.
Yeah, welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Allan Gilbreth and Alissa Diggs and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we're sort of noting the generational gap between our panel here. Max and Alissa grew up in a generation where, when it came to superheroes, basically the movies and the TV shows came first. The comics were sort of secondary. In fact, Alissa, you said you probably haven't even read that many comics, right?
Yeah, barely any.
Well, we're going to convert you, and you said there was a definite bias in your home against DC. It was all Marvel in your home.
It was mostly Marvel for sure, yeah.
Well, one more recommendation we're going to make, because Brandon and I have been giving you some homework. We also have to mention Mask of the Phantasm. That's a classic DC. And I'm going to loan you some of my stories from Legends of the Dark Knight. There's some really good, and they're nice and digestible because it's 4 issues or 5 issues. It's a one and done, and it's really good.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I'll give that a try.
Brandon, speaking of Batman, we gave everybody a couple weeks to get caught up, and we're going to go spoiler heavy. So, too bad, folks. We're going to talk about the Caped Crusader, which we've been waiting for a long time to come out. And so, go ahead, Brandon, because
so let me go ahead and set the table for it. It is the spiritual heir to Batman the Animated Series, and when I say it's spiritual heir, it's only because the creative team, you can those who weren't already involved with the animated series, obviously grew up on it.
Yeah.
It takes place in what would you say, the late 30s, early 40s, maybe?
Basically, yeah. I've heard basically just think of 1940. And it's before we had the Bat computer.
There's no computers, no cell phones. There's literally a part in it where Barbara is trying to get a hold of her dad, and she has to use a payphone.
Right.
And then she turns around and uses that same payphone to call Batman. And I mean, we're talking old school. You get to see the switchboard. Batman has a glass, like board behind him.
It's like a map of the city.
Where it's a map of the city where he marks things off. He's basically got a murder board behind him.
He's got racks of books instead of the Bat computer. He's got like a library in the Bat cave, which is interesting.
And file cabinets all over the place. We've got two of the crookedest police officers we've ever seen in Glass and Bullock. And it's just, Jim Gordon. And I was really interested in the fact that they took Barbara and made her a public defender.
Well, so we should say that what I've been hearing, I don't know if this is official policy, but basically they call this an Elseworlds universe. So this takes place completely on its own. It's its own, because you have to overlook some things. I mean, let's just be honest. There's some things that would not have happened in the 1940s that they stuck in the show. Whatever, that's fine. But
first of all, Jim Gordon, much like he is in the Pattinson Batman movies, he is African American.
Right.
Barbara, of course, his daughter, she looks very much like a 1940s version of Leslie Grace, who was going to be the one playing her in the new Batgirl movie.
I didn't know that because I haven't seen any footage of that.
Renee Montoya is a detective. They would have never promoted a woman to detective back in those days.
Right.
And it just...
Well, let's just lay it out
all
there.
Of it. It's like, it is straight up just like, it is full on. We're not quite at World War, II yet. We are right there. And like, even Batman is still new to the game, and he's in the old school costume with the short gloves and the hooked ears. And
they didn't make his gloves purple, which is a good choice.
Well,
they
that's
made
true.
him black, but he looks just like the old school. But the one thing, Brandon, I've got a lot of praise for the show. I got a few minor critiques, but the one thing, right out of the gate, they don't pull any punches. They make the Penguin a lady, and I was prepared to hate a female Penguin, and I got to be honest, she was pretty
so cool.
But evil.
Oh,
I mean,
right,
brutally evil, even against her own
It's a
kid.
first episode, so we're gonna go a little spoiler heavy.
It's
on this.
spoiler heavy.
You find out, of course, that Oswalda and Rupert Thorne, just like Oswald and Rupert Thorne, they're competing mob bosses, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Penguin's always been kind of an arms dealer. Thorne is, the crime boss of Gotham. He's not Falcone, like you're used to in the movies. We saw Rupert Thorne in the original animated series. We saw Rupert Thorne in the comics. But when Thorne makes a comment about how he heard about Oswalda's, dealings, a little birdie told him, she immediately thinks it's her son, her smaller son, her favorite son. She locks him in a trunk and throws him overboard.
Yeah. Just
literally just, and then she looks at the other kid and goes, I guess you're my favorite now.
It was sort of shocking. Like, there's some pretty horrifying things in this. And we've said at its best, Batman is almost like a noir horror show or story, at least. And they kind of did that right out of the gate.
Yeah, and you get to see some serious, like, the Golden Age style. Like Alfred, everybody's used to Alfred being this very prim and proper, very thin, classy Englishman. Pennyworth in this is literally he's a little chunky. He's a little he's off model from what you would expect.
Alfred.
Right. He's the one who showed up in the comics in the beginning. He is the one who came to his father's funeral and was offered a job by the Waynes. And he was a war-weary guy then, but we really never knew much about him. But you can kind of see it in his actions.
Yeah.
And him and Bruce are not as close as what you would expect, if you absorbed all this other Batman media.
Although I have to believe that they're setting it up for him to warm up. It's an odd thing because he calls him Pennyworth. He doesn't say Alfred. And he's like, my coffee's cold. Get me. He treats him like kind of a jerk. I hate to say it.
And the other thing I love is the fact that they do the full-on separation between aloof Bruce Wayne and intense Batman. And every so often, he kind of lets the mask drop when he's Bruce. And, because it's like he's still getting used to all of it.
Yeah, because I thought the way they did Bruce Wayne was actually pretty interesting because he comes across, he wears the mask and everything, of being just this aloof guy. But he does these. I will say it's much more subtle. There's some good subtle writing in here, like when he tries to bribe the cop. Like,
right.
Hey, could we speed this appointment along? I'm happy to make a donation to the whatever.
Yeah.
But it seems like a very simple thing, but he was really trying to, as Batman, figure out which cops can I trust. And It was a pretty good way of doing it. And there's a lot of good subtlety and a lot of good features in the show. And we're going to continue to talk about it here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, Alan. I don't know what an elderberry smells like. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson, here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Allan Gilbreth and Alissa Diggs and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And we haven't heard much from Allan today. Of course, he didn't watch the Caped Crusader, I guess, like us. But I know we're going to be hearing from him when we talk about the Saturday night trailer. Allan, that was right in our... We remember that. I remember the premiere of Saturday night.
I watched that show, yes.
But in the meantime, we're talking about the Caped Crusader. It's spoiler heavy. We gave everybody a couple weeks to digest this. It's the show we've been waiting for years, really, Brandon, since we heard about it. I'm just going to because we don't have time to unpack the entire series, but I will say I've already watched the episodes multiple times. I would if I had to give it a percentage, I'd give it a 95%.
Oh, yeah.
My quibbles are very minor. It's just a few things. They took some liberties with, history, you could say. But also, what I thought, I saluted them for trying to bring in some secondary characters that I'd never heard of. But I have to say, I didn't much care about, like, the Gentleman Ghost or that one girl that was there was a couple minor characters. I'm like,
So
they could have done more, I think.
I mean, Gentleman Ghost is like a classic DC character. He's been around for 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's shown up a lot, but he doesn't really fit the Batman motif. But this does give you the whole point that Gotham genuinely is haunted. But the best part of that entire episode has nothing to do with Batman, has nothing to do with Gentleman Ghost. It's the fact that Papa Midnight from the Constantine and Hellblazer comics he's very prominent in there.
See, I wanted to see him more. It was like the voodoo guy or whatever.
Yeah,
he was cool, but he was in there for 2 minutes.
Like 2 minutes. Yeah. It's and yeah, the only thing that I really enjoyed about the episode with the Anton and his sister Natalia and her draining the children for life force is the fact that all the kids were Robins.
Well, that's what I didn't like, because you know me, I don't like Robin as a character, period. But yeah,
there's Dick.
That's what made me
nervous.
nervous.
Jason and there's Stephanie and then there's Carrie, and like they full on went. That was genuinely Carrie Kelly. She's like running through with her slingshot, just nailing things.
Yeah.
But I think that's as close as we're going to get to a Robin is the kids in Leslie Tompkins' orphanage. We're never going to see a Robin in costume in this series.
I hope so, yeah.
Actually, now that Joe has reiterated it, I want all of them. I want all of them to be Robin.
I think, they should all grow up to be Robins.
All of them need to be rocking Robin costumes in the first episode of season 2. And then just show up in every episode afterwards, just almost like in a Justice League Unlimited style. It's like, well, I got this mission. I'm going to need this Robin.
Well, let's just say,
all Robins.
Brandon, I think you and I agree, though. The high point of this series for me is Two-Face. I think
absolutely.
They did Two-Face really almost better than I've seen anywhere except in the comics.
This was the closest I've ever seen them do Two-Face to the source material. The difference in the way it happens here is that after he doesn't, drop the charges on somebody that Thorne wanted, somebody comes in and basically catches him in the bathroom and splashes acid in his face. But in the comics, it was during the trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess they kind of hit on that in Batman Forever, as much as nobody wants to, admit that a Val Kilmer Batman movie was good. Is that somebody throws the acid on him in the courtroom.
Right.
He brings up the file to, kind of cover his face, but he only covers half of it. He gets splashed. Bruce is the first one to him. He's in full costume. That's kind of the moment that, while they never really tell you this, that's the moment that Harvey knows who Batman is.
Here's what I loved about the way they handled Two-Face, because let's face it, we've seen the version where basically half of his it's like half of his face is completely melted off. Well, you die. You can't survive that. But the other thing I like, so he's scarred to the point where it's definitely Two-Face. But what I also liked was
his face is melted and his teeth are kind of like, receded from the acid, but he still has his hair, and it has changed color just like it did in the comics.
What I liked about it though is that because even after he becomes Two-Face, he's not like in the movies and stuff, he flips a switch. He is suddenly evil. Like he really leans into the evil. What I liked about this is even after his scars and after he's damaged, there's still humanity, and he's still trying to more or less be good. And the thing is, when Two-Face is done well, he's a very conflicted. He's literally a split personality, but there's good in him too. And they didn't just make this black and white. They made it where you're really kind of rooting for him.
And I love the fact that we get to see, like, there's a point where he's talking with Barbara, and she's talking about it's like, we can get you a deal. We'll be able to get you out of incarceration. Sorry if I'm spoiling it for you guys. You had 2.5 weeks to watch it. And he's like, anybody else would not get this deal.
I don't deserve
this.
Right.
I've killed people. I need to pay for that. And they're like, but you're as much a victim of this than anybody else. And it's like, back in the 1940s, no one would ever, think about, well, because of your mental health, you weren't in control. And so it was nice to see, kind of like, and especially when it's someone like Barbara and Commissioner Gordon and Renee Montoya and Batman are basically the only people he has at his back.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a moment where Bruce lets the mask drop when they're in Harvey's room. And he does, "You're Harvey Dent. You don't give up." And it's like, dude.
Yeah, I hope they keep this up. I mean, and then, of course, let's just say it you knew, this wasn't even hard to predict, but you knew at the very end of the series you're going to see a teaser of the Joker.
Yeah.
I think it's great that they didn't bring him in. He would have dominated everything, so I like that they waited, and he looks
so
cool.
dark.
We only see his eyes and his neck. He looks cool.
And it comes off like kind of like a sizzle reel at the end of a movie for like the sequel,
right?
And it's like you hear somebody laughing, it's not him.
Yeah, it's
a victim. He's testing his serum on.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing.
Says in
actually,
a very dark, deep voice, he goes, "Perfect."
Yeah,
and you never see the smile, you never see hear him laugh. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, like I said, there are things you're going to roll your eyes. I mean, you just got to, it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's made in the year 2024, so that's what you get.
There's a handful of DC fans are going to, complain about it being woke. Shut up. Just shut up. The moment you say the word woke, you don't mean anything anymore, and your opinion doesn't matter.
Well, some is made better than others, but it's really good, and we highly recommend it. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Saturday Night, the trailer.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
Yeah! Oh, no!
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Allan Gilbreth and Alyssa Diggs and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. Allan, we haven't heard much from you today. And, I mean, in fairness, you didn't see the Caped Crusader, so you were just respectfully quiet while Brandon and I basically showered love on mostly. I'd give it a 95 out of 100. It's a good show. I really like it. So,
well, I mean, if it sounds disingenuous if we didn't have anything to complain about.
Right. Yeah. But a trailer dropped, and we all, well, it's funny because we talk about being intergenerational. Allan and I were really the only ones that probably have been with Saturday Night Live since the beginning. I was 9 years old when it dropped, and that was the big deal. We got a pizza, and we stayed up and we watched Saturday Night Live. But I think I watched the first one, Allan. And this movie, it's interesting. It's called Saturday Night, and it shows kind of what went into getting it on the air. And it looks like it was a disaster, and somehow it's endured.
It's them prepping for the first episode.
Yes. I hope it's one of those literally where the entire thing is just that one day, but I don't know if it is.
It is. It's supposed to be the day of the first airing.
Yeah, it was utter bedlam.
And everything that goes wrong leading up to it.
I didn't recognize one actor in this movie, and I think that was intentional. Like just a lot of unnamed, because they were all unknowns when
nobody
it came
recognized anybody
But
at
Allan,
all on this one. Yeah,
you must remember the origin.
I actually watched this original episode, and because of friends I had a little later that were connected to Second City, the basically the comedy group that kind of gave birth to all of this.
Yeah.
You got to hear the stories. You got to hear the,
Second City, the comedy club.
Yeah,
that's where they all were. That's where they all trained.
Everybody kind of cut their teeth there, and a lot of huge stars later came out of Second City.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it was the birthplace of a lot of talent. But okay, for anybody that has ever tried to make a movie, done a broadcast, some kind of production where you got to bring a lot of moving parts together. And of course, I'm looking at the three of you across from me who every November, whether you need to or not, torture yourselves trying to get a convention to pull off.
Yeah.
Doing a live event is unforgiving. It either happens or it doesn't.
It's controlled chicken herding. And this is all about Lorne Michaels and how he, against every possible odd and every possible thing and every possible ego, by sheer will force, made this happen.
Sure seems like it, yeah.
It was going to either fly or die on live television October 11th, 1975.
Mm-hmm.
And the odd thing is, it's kind of like in live theater, the worse the dress rehearsal is, the better the actual show will be. It's kind of a long tradition. It says if the dress rehearsal is the best show we've ever done, opening night's going to be pretty bad. It's just kind of a tradition. So everything that could go wrong kept going wrong until they got, and it's too late. It's now too late. You got to do this.
Yeah.
And they did it.
Have you seen the poster for this?
Yeah. The poster's hilarious.
So the poster has the 10 castmates, 5 on each side. It's all darkened in blue in the background. It says October 11th, 1975, 10 p.m. The writers are inebriated. The set is on fire. The sound system is wrecked. The actors are physically assaulting each other. The crew is in open revolt. They have 90 minutes to figure it all out, or the network is pulling the plug. And what I love is the fact that it's opening in theaters October 11th, 2024.
Yes.
I can't wait.
That's so
I think
cool.
it's going to be great. I mean, it looks like
that.
a real moment in history. And I mean,
Which means that next October, is the 50th anniversary.
Yes.
makes me feel old. So,
What
what
do you think I feel?
What I wanted to see more of is John Belushi. I don't know. You showed me a picture of the actor, but I didn't get, because he's the guy I wouldn't want to have to try to portray
Pass
him.
this over to Joe so he can see.
No,
Belushi.
I saw. Yeah, he looks good, but I mean, how do you play John Belushi? It's like
you get coked up and go to set.
I don't know, man.
Sorry.
There's some personalities that are sort of singular, like you just don't mimic them.
All right, you just hit what made this work.
Yeah.
It's Saturday Night Live, and these are all highly characterized singular personalities. Nobody is cookie cutter. Nobody is the Dan Rather character. Nobody's the Joe Thornton character. Nobody's a knockoff of anything.
Right.
And it is just, it's basically controlled bedlam. And however, this formula for Saturday Night Live, and it's one of these, a huge thing. I'm really looking forward to the movie.
Yeah.
Because the show itself has been such an incubator for so many decades. So many people have come through there.
I can't imagine the stress of making Saturday Night Live. You said it yourself. I mean, okay, we do something once a year. Can you imagine every week you got to write new material?
Yeah.
And you got to I mean, it sounds insane. 90 minutes. Maybe 30 minutes a week, but not 90 minutes,
Can you imagine if we, I don't know, did a radio show every week?
No, it's nothing like that. I
I have seen the work you put into for Tool Talk, which is our Saturday morning thing that we can't usually get you on the phone to talk about, Geek Tank because of the fact that by that point your brain is mush.
Well, also it's not the 1970s, and think of everyone is doing cocaine and they're doing. I mean, and all the weird personalities and all that.
There's a
culture.
reason John's brother Jim sells a weed product called the Smell of SNL.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this movie does what it looks interesting. I have a feeling it's going to be a big hit. So,
well, it's going to be a lot darker than people think if they actually tell the whole truth.
Yeah. I hope it's funny, though. I mean, it's got to be.
Oh, it's going to be a scream.
It's going to have its funny moment. Well, Brandon, I guess we'll have to put a pin in it. We have tons of trailers to get to, but
we do. But guys, D23 is not done. We can totally do all those trailers next week.
Ooh,
okay,
yeah.
but we can't do them now because the show's over. We're out of time. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Allan Gilbreth.
I'm Maximilian.
I'm Alissa Diggs.
And I am Brandon Olmsted, reminding you, appreciate live theater. It's a nightmare.